Good morning. Once again, just proud of our group, how they responded at Nebraska last week, and to gut out a win the way we did after the week that we had. Just an impressive finish to that week. Wasn't pretty, wasn't up to the standards of play that we want to have, but the finish was exactly what we needed last week. And turning the page, I'm very excited for this opportunity. Get back in Camp Randall to finish the regular season off against Minnesota and bring the Axe back. I'm excited for the opportunity our seniors have here with Senior Day, and just really looking forward to getting to game day.
Jim, regarding Nick's targeting call, I understand there's an appeal process you can go through. Is that something you plan to pursue? Have you guys initiated that process yet? Just your thoughts on that.
We have started that process, and we'll continue to push. I don't agree with the call, so obviously we want to get some clarity on, one, was it correct, and two, how can we train our players better to avoid those situations. He was committed to making a tackle and did everything he could to avoid contact, as far as rolling off, and unfortunate that it was called that way, and hopefully we can get it changed, but I don't know what the likelihood of that will be.
Jim, what's this rivalry with Minnesota come to mean to you? And will you have anybody come in and speak to the team about the history like they've done in years past?
Yeah, we'll have a number of people talk. The beauty of this program is we've had a lot of people who've been a big part of this rivalry, and it means a lot to a lot of people. So I'm excited to kind of teach the guys who don't know much about the history. It means everything. It's the longest rivalry in college football. If that doesn't mean anything to you, then it's hard. We've talked at length on what I feel about rivalries in college football. It's what makes the game special, and we will respect the rivalry, and I'm excited to get out there and go and get a win.
Jim, going back to the targeting situation, if the appeal doesn't go through, this would be the second year in a row that your defense is affected by the targeting call in the Minnesota game. Just your thoughts too. Should there be any revisions in your mind with the targeting situation if there is that opportunity down the road?
I would like it to be changed. In my opinion, I think there are clear violations of rules that need to be punished, and I think there's a lot of gray. And they've done a good job, I think, of eliminating some of that gray, but it's still a subjective call, and I think there's the intent of the rule, and then there's some situations just like Nick's that kind of fall into that gray area of depends on how somebody sees it that day, and that's what I hate for these guys. They work too hard to get thrown out of games and miss time for bang-bang situations that you can clearly see were not violent and intentional. And like I said, the ones that are clear, you should be punished. There are certain hits that we're trying to get out of the game of football, and that's why the rule is not 100% bad, but I would like there to be revisions to it, and hopefully in the future there can be. But I do think there has been progress over the last year or two.
Jim, a couple weeks ago you mentioned the transitions that C.J. Getz has gone through throughout his career here, and he's had a couple of good games really back-to-back. Do you think he's kind of a rarity, maybe becoming a rarity in the sport, that guy waits as long as he did to finally kind of get his time, and maybe not going to happen as much now with the transfer portal and guys maybe trying to jump to different opportunities?
Well, I hope he's not becoming a rarity, because that's the reality of football, is a lot of players, it takes time. They are not a finished product when they get to the college level, and I think that's the false reality of kind of where football is right now, is everybody wants it right now. And they expect immediate success, and they expect the playing time, they expect the production, but that's not how it works. And that's why the transfer portal is loaded right now. Is the process, I think, is getting ahead of itself, and we have to continue to push to educate these players on really what it takes and what it means. It really hasn't been that long where the expectation was to get into a program and grow and develop and continue to take steps to increase your role. Only recently has that drastically changed. We've had these conversations just last week as a defensive staff. You look at the experience we've had on our side. I was the outlier playing my second year. Everybody else took year 3, year 4, where all of a sudden they took that big jump. And these are guys who've played a lot of football, and that's not uncommon. But I think the misconception out there of players is they're on a 3-year plan right now. And, if it doesn't happen year 1, well, is this the right place for me? It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. So hopefully CJ Getz is not the outlier, but the norm kind of gets back to what the reality of the sport is and the development of 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old men is. And, that'd be a big part of, if I get this job, is re-educating them on what the reality is of this jump from the high school to college level is.
Jim, after Nick left the game, Caden Johnson was one of the guys who came on, and in that brief stretch, he made a handful of plays. So I'm wondering, what kind of stood out to you about what you saw from him in maybe that final quarter plus, and with him, this being year 3 for him in the program, where have you seen his development?
Yeah, I was very proud of that whole linebacker group on how they stepped up. You mentioned Caden. He made multiple plays down the stretch. Darrell Peterson gets his first sack, comes up with a huge play. CJ Getz, unsung play on the second down, the last drive. He runs one down from the opposite side of the formation when we had a mistake. Huge plays to finish that game out by the outside linebacker group, and in a time that we needed it, right? We didn't have our leader. We didn't have our number 1 playmaker at the position. So just very proud. They're continuing to get better. The consistency is just rising. And you're starting to see the light come on from a confidence and a play speed, physicality standpoint from that young group, and it gets us really excited as coaches to see what the future is going to be.
Jim, with just the holiday as is, how does your practice schedule, change this week at all? And the second part, maybe, are the coaches allowed to have dinners with players, or how's kind of the meal, or how's that day kind of affect what's going on this week?
Yeah, the week will be changed kind of towards the end as school closes. Thursday, Friday, we're able to adjust the schedule just based on not having classes. So we'll do that, and we'll throw a team kind of dinner, early dinner for our guys, as many families and friends over as we can. And it's always great to kind of change the mood, get away from football a little bit, watch some NFL. There's still plenty of time before game day, and also able to kind of tweak what Friday's schedule will be just without the classes as well. So it's definitely a change, but it's always fun. Anytime you can be around your players, get them around family, and just change the mood a little bit is great for your football team.
Jim, Minnesota earlier this year lost their best wide receiver. Their quarterback's been banged up. But that running back, if you look at his numbers, I mean, he's been tremendous for them. What do you see when you look at him on tape, and you've obviously played him before, and not being in that locker room, how much you think, what is his value to that offense? I mean, where might they be without him?
He's been a top-tier running back in college football for a long time. I'm ready for him to leave and move on. It's just impressive, the physicality, the consistency that he runs with, the vision. He's going to make you earn it every time you have to tackle him, and he's done it for a long time in that program. So he sets the tone. You can tell, their offensive line feeds off of it. The other running backs, they mimic his running style as well. They're very consistent in what they ask their backs to do, and I think it starts with him. Obviously, above him, right, the coaching style, what they ask their players to do, but anytime your best player is that consistent and productive, it's impressive. And they're a time of possession team. It's very similar to us, where they want to control the clock. They're not afraid of shortening the game and trying to find ways to win it in the second half. And defensively, they're playing well. They're creating turnovers. They're limiting possessions from offenses as well, and just very good complementary football. And they've been doing that for years. And I think it really starts with the run game and specifically with Mo.
You were asked a couple of weeks ago if you've had a chance to sit down with Chris and kind of lay out your vision. Just an update on that, have you? And now that the job's been posted, do you anticipate something more formal a more formal sit down this week at all?
Yes, I believe that will happen soon. I mean, I don't really want to get into much of that right now. You know, this week to me is still about this season. It's about this group of players. As far as the media goes, I don't need or want that attention for our guys. So I'm going to have some conversations this week, and hopefully it leads in the direction I want it to go. I got about $20 if I can get some of your sources in here. There's a lot of information I'm hearing, but I haven't been told. So, yeah, I'm excited for the opportunity to really lay out my entire vision for the athletic department, hopefully soon.
Jim, there's been some inexperience in youth on defense all season, but Torchio and Keon have kind of held it down. Well, how have you seen kind of both of their growth throughout their time here, and both on and off the wheel, turning in their best year of their career now?
As a coach, all you can ask for is growth and development. And they've been making plays in this defense for a long time. And anytime you see the off-the-field leadership, you know, the consistency, you bringing younger players along, like that's what really gets you excited, because that's going towards the future of the program. And they're both guys who had strong leaders in their position groups for years when they were young. And this year, you know, very, very aware that they had to be that person and wanted it and asked advice and wanted to know how to get it done. And even cooler to me is not naturally who they are, right? They are more of sit back, let others lead, do my job. And to see them really get out of their shell, become more vocal, it's really exciting as a coach. You know, some guys just have that knack of leadership, and it's in there, right? And others, it takes time, and they would rather kind of sit back and be the one-on-one type guy, grabbing guys on the side. But to see them become more vocal with the entire team, that spreads, and that's what's needed on a team to have success.
Jim, when you look back at the Minnesota game last year, there was obviously a lot on the line for this program with the division. What stands out when you reflect on that game? What did Minnesota do well? What didn't you guys do well? Is that something that you'll talk about or have talked about this year, just the feeling of losing to Minnesota and guys experiencing that?
Yeah, we already addressed it this morning. I think they out-physicaled us last year, and they finished, right? And we had the lead going at halftime, and they finished. They made plays in the second half to swing the game and create momentum and put us on our heels, and we couldn't overcome it. So I already mentioned, you know, they're okay shortening the game, playing tough, playing field position, finding ways to create turnovers and make it a second-half game. We got to win it. And we have to dominate the line of scrimmage, which is different this week, right, because it's going to be a good slugfest. You have to make plays. You have to make big plays on the perimeter, in the run game, in the pass game. You have to create turnovers. That's what's going to get it done. And it might be one, right? It might be three. You don't know what you're going to need. So I'm excited for the challenge. They're a physical downhill team on offense. Obviously, defensively, we're playing at a high level right now, and offensively last week, it was really fun to see our guys get into a rhythm, and it took us a while, but we were able to finish some drives and get a win. We got to come out hot, starting the first quarter, to get this one done.
You mentioned this rivalry off the top. You played them 4 times. I know that's a long time ago, but anything that stands out from those games and what the rivalry came to mean to you from those games? I know one game, I think Anthony Davis ran wild. I think the 2004 game, I don't know if you remember much about that because you guys were unbeaten at the time and you beat them pretty handily.
Yeah, they stand out. You know, to me, senior day was an amazing experience to win the Axe, keep it home, you know, finish off the rivalry that way. 2002, I think Anthony Davis went off and had a huge game. I had a couple interceptions. That never gets brought up. I don't really understand why, but he gets all the credit for that one. But, yeah, I mean, you just know the records don't matter. You go in there, it's going to be a physical game. You have to earn it. You got to take it away. And that's the fun part about rivalries to me is it doesn't matter. Banged up, healthy, struggling, playing well, you know, you go out there and win it. Go earn a win. So I've always respected this program. I don't like them, right? But I respect them because they have an identity. They know who they are, and they're going to force you to beat them, very similar to what we are. So it's going to be a fun experience on Saturday, and we need to get out of there with a win.
Jim, you mentioned their offensive line, their run game. It seems like that's been a big emphasis for Fleck since he got there, is improving that offensive line. How have you seen it kind of grow in the last 4 or 5 years?
Literally grow, right? From a size standpoint, massive up front. And they are not complicated in what they try to get done, but they're going to force you. They're going to run downhill and force you to tackle them. You're going to throw their RPOs and play action behind it. And it's simplicity at its finest a little bit. They limit the options you have on defense at times, especially if they're ahead of the sticks. It's very similar to playing option style of football. If they're ahead of the chains and they're moving the football on the ground, they're going to be very patient and they're going to force your hand a little bit, right? Are you willing to be aggressive, right? And they're going to counter off of that. Are you willing to sit back and be patient? So it's a similar thought process on the defensive side of playing option football at times because of the patience that they show. Most teams don't have that patience. And then defensively, they're creating some problems. They're playing very well in the box, playing physical, changing coverages, forcing the quarterback to think, forcing O lineman to think. Anytime you're mixing and matching that way on defense, causing multiple layers of issues, you're going to play well. And tackling, physicality has been there for them in previous years, and they probably haven't gotten credit for some of the athletes that they've had. They've put out some very talented players in recent years.
Jim, this isn't a Minnesota-specific question, but you've had to devise ways to stop various types of offenses over the years. Is there a scheme or a system that's more difficult to go up against than others? Is there? I don't know. I know that's a broad question because there's a lot of different types, but I'm just curious what your thoughts on that.
I think that gets a little bit to your personnel. What is our personality on defense? What are our strengths? Because I think it can change year in and year out. Obviously versus a spread right now, we got a lot of options. We can get to some unique things, but we've also been pretty damn good in the run game. So I think to me it more goes with your strengths and who they have, right? Not all X's and O's are created equal. And, a little bit of the equalizer, the great equalizer right now in college football is a quarterback that can run and a quarterback that can turn a bad play into a good play. And that's always given us issues, right? As most teams, you look around the country, anytime you can play perfect football and still lose, it's pretty frustrating. So, I don't know if I answered your question because I think it truly comes down to your personality and kind of what you're consistently doing well at the time. And if that matches up with the other team's strengths, you feel good. If it doesn't, you're going to have to try to steal some plays throughout the game.
Jim, I know you mentioned you don't. It's about this week in the season still, but I'm just curious how it feels like you're putting yourself in a good position to earn the job. How do you balance kind of forming the vision for long term and just kind of focusing on the game as well? I'm sure you've kind of thought about the big picture as well. How have you balanced the two?
Well, you can do both. Just because I don't need to talk about it with media and people outside of the program doesn't mean I'm not thinking of all of those things. So I have to learn how to compartmentalize and put my focus where it needs to be. There's a lot of hours in the day to be able to get that done. So that's the fun part. It's not going to change. If I get this job, right, it's only going to be every day from here on forward of having a lot of different boxes to check and conversations that need to be done and big decisions. So I'm excited for that opportunity if I get it. We need to win and play well. That was when I stepped into this position, the only chance that I had to get the job was to change the course of the season, right? So to be able to focus on playing better football and finding a way to get wins, getting bowl eligible, how you play, style of play matters. We had a lot of big things that needed to be accomplished on the football field, and throughout that process, I've been able to have a lot of conversations on what the future should look like.
Jim, when you go into a week like this where the other team's got a banged-up quarterback, you're not sure which one's going to play, how do you balance your time preparing for both, or do you even do that? Do you just say, like, hey, let's just kind of prepare for the offense and maybe the quarterback doesn't matter as much?
Quarterbacks always matter. They always matter. So, it makes it a little bit more difficult. If the quarterbacks are similar in how they're used, it makes it easier, but obviously in this case, there's a huge discrepancy in experience and trust in the offense. So we have to prepare a little bit differently for both styles of quarterback, or both quarterbacks that could be on the field. Said they're very consistent in their approach and how they attack, which really is going to force us into digging deeper into finding what the true differences are based on who the quarterback is. But to me, the biggest thing is that experience level. Tanner Morgan's played a really long time as well and been very successful in that offense and knows it like the back of his hand, right? And they put the ball in his hands to make a lot of decisions. So if he's the quarterback this week, it definitely changes, I think, their aggressiveness and their approach on how they attack us.